You're working way too hard in the garden. So today, I'm gonna show you why and what to do about it so that you can make your garden experience less work, more abundant, and more enjoyable. We're mid-April here, and as you see in my garden, there's nothing going on yet. It's still pretty cool. We're still getting freezes. It's just soil and compost. But in just a couple months, it's going to look like this. It's going to be abundant, rich, ready for harvest. And all I will have done between now and then is to spread compost and to plant some seeds. That's it. So there's two key areas where people spend most of their time, most of their physical work, and honestly, most of their stress that just isn't that enjoyable. So I want to help you get rid of those problems, okay? So the first one is working the soil, right? Preparing the soil to get ready to plant. Some people do this in the fall, some people do it in the spring, but either way, generally, you're going to do something to get your soil ready to sow seeds. You know, the common thing to do traditionally for forever is to till the ground, till the soil. Now, if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with no-till. You probably think you know where I'm gonna go, and you're kind of right. I am gonna say, stop tilling, stop working the ground so hard. You're working way too hard. All this you see right here, you can see a few rows have been composted, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have a few more rows to do here. That's all we're gonna do. We're not gonna turn the soil over. We're not gonna broad fork. I'm not gonna harrow. I'm gonna add material just like nature does, layer up, and we're gonna plant seeds in it. And people spend a lot of time turning the soil over. Now, I'm not here to tell you that turning the soil over and tilling is wrong. There is a time and place when you wanna do that. When we got to this garden, it was covered in black plastic, the soil was dead, and it was compacted. That was 7 years ago. So we came in and we tilled the ground up. We made these nice beds and we turned it over, we loosened it up, we mixed in some compost and aerated it. But we've never tilled it since. This is the 7th year in this garden, and it produces wonderfully well every year. You just don't need to do it. It's not that it's wrong, it's just too much work. It disrupts the soil biology and the natural processes in the soil, and it encourages weeds, which we'll talk about in a minute. So you're just working too hard if you're working the soil. And it's the same with broad forking. So after we did the original tilling, I would broad fork every year just to loosen the soil up without turning it over and disrupting that ecosystem. I was hanging out with my friend Paul Gauchi from Back to Eden Gardening, and if you haven't seen that film, you really need to check it out, because he's going to be saying the same thing I am, but in more depth. And I was telling him about what I was doing and how I had adopted his methods, but I was still afraid to let go of like loosening the soil, so I was broad forking. And he was like, Josh, you're working too hard. Just stop. Just trust me. You're working too hard. Stop broad forking. Just add your compost, your mulch to the top, and enjoy it. This was 4 years ago. I said, okay, Paul, I'll try that. So I came home and we didn't broad fork. We've never broad forked again. This is our 4th year now. Not only not tilling, but not even broad forking. I've had no decrease in yield. And in fact, they've even been getting less weeds year after year. You just don't need to do it. So that's really step number 1, to take away the stress, the work, the time. Stop tilling your soil. Stop broad forking it every year. You don't need to do it. You only do it in the beginning when you're getting started. You got a new piece of ground, it's compact, you need to aerate it, you need to shape the beds. We've got these raised rows, you know, whatever it is. If you need to do that to get started, great, go for it. Don't be a purist, but then you don't need to keep going. You don't need to work that hard. The second point where you're probably working way too hard and you're probably stressing even more is around weeds. We all get stressed out about weeds. Weeds are just anything you don't want in your garden. So weeds can be grasses, broadleaves, ground crawlers. It's just anything that you don't want in your garden. And everybody stresses about weeds. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I get rid of weeds? Well, you're not gonna like this answer, but you don't. You're never gonna get rid of the weeds. Okay, we're gonna talk about how to control them in just a minute, but weeds are a fact of life. They're a reality. And so the first thing we need to do, breathe. Stop stressing. Stop worrying about it. It's just a fact of life, and it's going to be okay. You do that, take a couple breaths, and let's approach this subject new and figure out how to reduce that weed load or deal with them if you have them. So first off, how do we minimize weeds? Which we can definitely do. This garden from year one to now probably has 20% of the weed pressure that it had the first year where we turned the soil all up and got it going. So what happens? Right, well, weeds come from two places, right? They're inherently in the soil bed. They're in all soil. Even in the driest desert, when it gets rain, stuff pops up and grows. The seeds are there. You're not gonna get rid of them. So that's why I say, like, breathe, don't fight it, all right? It's gonna be okay. But when we turn the soil over, when we mix it up, we're bringing all those weeds to the top. So that's the primary reason people get really, really bad weed pressure. Nature, the way God designed it, wants the soil covered. And so when the soil is hot and baking and dry or depleted, it's gonna get the signals and it's gonna bring those weeds up. When you're tilling, you're just helping it. You're helping signal it and making those weeds available. When you stop turning the ground over, the first couple years, you're gonna get a lot of weeds. But as you get those under control, that seed bank on top of the soil doesn't get triggered to go. Doesn't get triggered to sprout up. And so stop turning the soil over. That's gonna help a whole lot. As you layer and you build up your soil, which we'll talk about in a minute, you're also making that seed bed deeper and deeper. And so those seeds don't get the conditions they need to sprout. So they're still there. They're just not going to show up. One of the other reasons, though, that you're not going to get rid of weeds is because, look, your compost, things you bring in, you're going to bring a few in here and there. The wind is going to bring a few in here and there. The birds are going to bring a few in. It's going to happen. But it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to take a lot of your time, and it doesn't have to be a stressor. So through mimicking nature and working with nature, you can drastically reduce your seed load. That's going to take a lot of the stress off. That happens over time, unless you can bring in a whole lot of material at once. But look, weeds do happen, okay? So say you've got a garden right now, your first, second year garden, and you got a lot of weed pressure. What do? Well, there's two strategies to deal with that until you get it under control. One is early in the spring when you're getting your plants in, you're getting your vegetable seeds planted or transplanted, and you're getting that weed pressure, make sure that you keep the weeds in bay until your plants get well established and get ahead of the weeds. And what's going to happen is those plants are going to get well rooted. They're going to get ahead of the weeds. And even if those weeds come in, even if they get out of control, and look, I know it happens. It's happened to me. I know it's happened to you. Your garden gets weedy. If you just make sure that you spend the time in the spring to get ahead of it, it's going to be okay. It's not going to look pretty, but it's going to be okay. Your garden is still going to work. It's still going to survive, and it's still going to produce a yield for you. And so again, this is where you just got to go, okay, I did what I could. I got a plan. I'm going to start working with nature. I'm going to start building my soil up, get that seed bank buried down so I don't have to deal with it in the future. But right now, it's okay. What do you do if the weeds do get ahead of you and you want to get them under control? Instead of stressing, what you can do is you can come in and chop and drop. Try to do this before they go to seed. So if you come in, they've gotten ahead of you, you were tending your garden and life went crazy like it does, and you step out of the garden for a couple of weeks in the wrong time of the year, and the weeds get going, and you don't want to leave them there, and come in and cut them down and chop and drop them and use them like a mulch and just lay them down on the soil. Okay, that's going to keep your soil covered. It's going to stop the weeds, slow them down, and it's actually helping you out. You're actually covering the soil. That's what nature does, right? That's what Mother Nature does. Is in the full cycle of the season, she says, well, the ground's bare, it's too hot, it needs to be covered. So up come all these different things that you don't want in the garden. What they want to do is they want to grow up, they want to produce seed, and they're covering the ground, and then they're building organic matter on top of the soil. So in essence, you can partner with those weeds and use them to your advantage by just cutting them down and laying them on the soil. Now, you might have to do that twice, maybe 3 times in a season before it gets cold enough, but that will keep them under control. Again, it's not pretty, it's not picture perfect, but it works, and you're actually adding nutrient to your soil. All those things we call weeds, the vast majority of them are bringing up bringing up minerals and different things that your soil needs, along with organic matter, and you can use it to mulch. It's fantastic. So tilling and weeds, those are really the two big stress points in the garden that I want you to stop worrying about. Stop the tilling unless you're starting a new garden. Stop worrying about it, okay? You'll get the weeds under control with what I'm about to show you, but don't stress about the weeds. Just work with them, get in flow, use them to your advantage. Just stopping to stress about them and realizing the value of them is gonna help you out and reduce the stress and your workload. But look, we wanna minimize weeds, we wanna build soil. So how do we do that? We do that by mimicking Mother Nature. Look at a forest. We've got this conifer forest all around us. You might have broadleaf deciduous forest where you're at, okay? Maybe you got desert. That's a different situation, but nobody's gardening this forest. Nobody's out there tending it. And look at the amount of vegetation that it produces, right? There's something to learn from that. What's happening? What's happening is the trees are creating their own soil, right? Through dropping their needles, their leaves onto the ground. It creates a covering, and then there's a healthy biology underneath that slowly breaks that down and breaks the nutrient down, and it's a complete cycle. We just want to mimic that here in the garden. We're not in a forest. We are in a garden, obviously. We want to maximize production, and a lot of times we want it pretty, and you know, we've got some specific goals, but we can still learn from that. All nature is doing is covering the ground every season, adding nutrient. That's all I want you to do in your garden. That's all I'm doing in this garden. Like I said at the beginning, you see how productive this garden is in summer, in the fall. All we're gonna do is just layer, just like the forest does, just like God made it in nature. We're just gonna layer, and we're gonna build up soil over time, and that's going to continue to add nutrient. That's going to continue to build layers that soften over time, even if it's a little compacted down below. That's going to bury your seed bank and reduce the weed pressure. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely easy. This is really, other than harvest, this is the most work you should do, is composting and maybe mulching. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's finish the discussion on composting. Let me just show you 7 years of no-till, 4 years of not even turning the soil over, just adding layers. And I can reach right down in here, okay? And it's still down low, a little more compact, but look at that. Look at this soil. It's crumbly, it's dark, it's rich, there's organic matter. There's roots in here, okay? That's it. That's beautiful. That is absolutely wonderful. All we're doing is composting. How much compost? Well, depends on where you're at in the journey. If you're early in your garden journey on a piece of ground, it's depleted, it's compact, you might want to go ahead and till it, like I said, that one time to get it going. How much material? Well, you're going to add more material if you can. Like literally several inches, 1, 2, up to 6 inches. You know, that can get expensive. It's a lot of work. But if you do that, you're gonna get yourself a better top layer. You're gonna suppress the weeds because they're gonna be way down in the layer, and you're gonna be just accelerating that nutrient. So the more you can add the first year or two, the better. By the time we get here at this stage, several years in, we're adding a 1/2 inch generally. This compost this year is a little coarser, so it's a little bit thicker, but you don't need to add very much. It's very, very simple. It's very, very easy. Mulch is very valuable, but it can also be a ton of work. And so I'm not a purist on this. If you're a follower of the no-till, organic, mimic nature movement, great, you're with me on these things. And what often comes with it is mulching, heavy mulching. And mulching is great. It works very well. So it does several things. One, it adds another layer, right? So it suppresses that weed bed and prevents those weeds from getting started and coming up when you've got a nice layer of mulch. That's awesome, super helpful. It also helps hold moisture in, right? It drastically slows down evaporation. And so it's great for keeping your soil from drying out. It also helps build the soil layers, the soil biology, and it also can moderate temperature, particularly in a very, very hot environment, hot, dry environment where the soil gets hot, you got a lot of evaporation. It really, really excels there. But in this, you know, no-till movement, mulch is like this thing that everybody has to do. And so I just want to free you up a little bit to say there is a time for mulch. You may want to put the work into mulch, but that's just it. It is a significant amount of work on top of composting, and you don't always need to do it. What I found here in our northern climate is that the mulch was preventing the soil from warming up in the spring. Okay, and so it was really setting us back to get started in our short season. It's a lot of work, not only to add it and to build it up, but to move it out of the way when you got fine seeds like carrots and different things. And so I've gone away from mulching our raised rows. Now, we'll mulch our walkways. It's a little hard to see it in here, but this is actually all wood shavings. It's just mostly broken down. It's very soft. It's like walking on a sponge right here. And so we're about ready to add a new layer. We do that every couple years. So that helps suppress weeds in here. It helps do all these things I was mentioning while still allowing our beds to take advantage of this spring sun and warm up early enough to extend our season. So in that case, we don't want to mulch as much. I'll probably add mulch to my garlic, but I'm going to use more cover cropping. I'm going to use more planting densely to get the soil covered for most of the season as opposed to mulching. That's what I recommend for a northern environment. It's just less work. But if you're in a hot environment, then mulching may be worth it for you. All right, I'm going to let you in on a really cool secret. This is a bonus tip that's going to reduce your work and effort and improve the condition of your soil. Don't pull the roots out from your garden plants at the end of harvest season, okay? Don't pull them out, cut them off. If you look over here, you can see where our corn was, and they're just cut off. Right here, this is where we grew some, I think this was broccoli or cauliflower, and you can see the roots. Matter of fact, most of it, like look, that plant had a huge root structure. Most of it's decomposed at this point. By pulling the roots of your plants out in the fall when you're harvesting, you're doing several things. One, you're disturbing the soil, and you're going to bring up some of those weed seeds that are in there. Okay, you're going to bring them up closer to the top. Two, you're depriving the soil of valuable organic matter and nutrient. These roots all go down into the ground. When you leave them there, they decompose and they add the nutrient that's in the plant. They add the carbon, the organic matter, back into the soil instead of you taking it out. And then those roots create pathways for oxygen and water, which, then helps life. Save yourself some work. Don't pull these out in the fall. In the springtime, when you come back around, a lot of it will be decomposed. Now, had I composted in the fall, which is what I usually do, more of this would be broken down right now. But still, you see how easy it comes out. Look at that. Very little left. So if you need to get it out of your way, you can come in the spring and just kind of pick them up. Super easy. Or you can leave them in and work around them, which is what I do, because I don't even want to do this work if I don't have to, even though it's not hard. I mean, you can see how easy that is. So you can get them out of your way if you need to, but you can also just plant around them, which is what we usually do. And you have just taken a huge step in reducing your workload and adding value to your garden soil. Compost is the key to this easy system. Check this video out to learn how to make your own.